Hello,
Sure.
welcome to the Maple Minds podcast, Indigenous Views. I'm Smarty. I come from Alberta, the Treaty 7 territory of the Piikani Nation, the Kainai Nation, the Tsuut'ina, and the Nakota Nation. Calvin?
My name is Calvin Stevens. I come from the East Coast. Traditionally, this is all unceded Mi'kmaq territory. And tonight we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to be talking about Bill 5. We're talking about Doug Ford and his blunder. We're talking about the Alberta pipelines. And we're going to talk about bringing our ancestors, bringing our people back to where our ancestors used to live, considering the global climate right now.
Um, I'm Polly, and I acknowledge that I live and work on the traditional and unceded territories of the Kungwin peoples, now known as Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and the Wasanish peoples. As a settler on this land, I recognize that I benefit from the colonial systems, and I am committed to learning, unlearning, and showing up in solidarity with Indigenous communities.
That's the one thing that people have to realize that despite whether if you're First Nation or you're not, we are all treaty people. So I was once taught that just because you're not First Nation doesn't mean you're not a treaty person. We're all treaty people. We've all benefited from the treaties of peace and friendship. And it doesn't matter what race you are, as long as you live in Canada, you're a beneficiary of that. So, with that said, let's get into it with Bill 5 from Ontario. Bill 5 in Ontario was force pushed right through legislation. And Bill 5 is basically, uh, I think what Doug Ford meant. He Mark Carney came and he was just like the giant Santa Claus giving out treats. So I pretty much narrowed down what he meant by that. And Bill 5 was it. So Bill 5 basically can force projects um, in provinces, and they can scoot around First Nation consultation. It gives them that right. It gives them that means to do so, as long as they make the make the project into a national whether a matter of national security. But who is to say what's a matter of national security? No one. So basically, you can put up any project. It might not have anything to do with national security, but if the Ford government labels it a project of national security, then it'll go through. And unfortunately, this is the same type of bill that the parliament has pulled through in the last couple of days. It was pushed fast, and I understand the reasoning and the logic of why it was pushed so fast, because we are in a time of crisis. Canada is set to be the next leader, both economically and militarily, of all democratic countries around the world. So they're trying to put legislation forward that will fast track every kind of national security project in the world. But what it does, but at the same time, if First Nations don't agree with these projects, or if First Nations aren't happy about something within these projects, they can basically push First Nations to the side and keep going with it. This is a far removed promise of what Mark Carney said. Mark Carney and a lot of the premiers said they want First Nation involvement, but they create legislation which is counterintuitive to what that they were campaigning on. So again, at the same time, we have to think about national security. We can't slow that down, but moving forward, after we've established all these projects to do with national security, what's to prevent the Carney government, or what's to prevent any other government moving forward from taking advantage of this legislation? And maybe they want to build a condo on a reservation or something, or I don't know, a dam near a reservation where they get their drinking water and where they depend on fishing and hunting, or want to drill for frack natural gas near a stream that provides drinking water and fishing for a small community. There is nothing for them that they can do to repeal this bill or project. And I'm surprised. I've had we have several First Nation people on Parliament. One of them is from my own community, Jamie Batiste, and there was all of his votes voted yes for this bill. There was no objection. There was no add-in language to the existing proposal. There was nothing. Basically, they just all rubber stamped this bill and pushed it through without careful consideration of what this bill can actually do moving into the future. Basically, First Nations won't really have a say if this bill is held in hand and say, I'm sorry, we passed legislation that says you don't matter, push, move to the side. So I don't know. It's contradictory to what Carney was saying. So I don't know. I'm pretty discouraged at that.
Hi, Calvin. Yes, I agree. The way I look at it, Carney is in it for himself and to make his cronies rich and get what he wants out of it, not really thinking of that it's going to push, as Absorbed One had said, First Nations out or poison the reses. And I'm sorry, that's not something I can't get down with as an Indigenous person myself. Um, and just a lack of not understanding. It's not even the lack of not understanding. It's the lack of importance they don't get. Whereas it's oh, don't come hat in hand, or you know
Yeah,
whatever, but they don't dig further into where this money comes from and why we get money from the federal government, being First Nations, Inuit, or Métis, and they just see it as a handout, and it's not a handout. It should be a hand up to help our communities grow and
yeah.
the
That's
settlements and the reservations, and that's what it should be. But everyone's like, oh, it's just a handout. These people don't understand. No, what they don't understand is the federal government. And I've looked into this case, and I've looked into it, and it says that if Canada were to pay back the First Nations trust accounts, Canada's economy would collapse. And that's why they're not doing it. So Mark Carney is not the issue. He is the prime minister. He is not the issue at hand. It is basically just that the conservative governments wanting to line their pockets and take away from the people that really need it, and within our Indigenous community.
I don't for projects of national security. This is what I have an issue with the bill. Project of national security. What defines as a project of national security? This is what concerns me. There should be a clear stipulation within that legislation that signifies what is a project of national security. Let's say, for example, the Arctic. Our Arctic territory, a project of national security would be the erection of a military base there to secure our oil reserves on that land. And if a First Nation community was to say no to this military base, then I totally agree. It should go forward with the project. But what if it's a private developer that wants to go into the Arctic and wants to set up shop there and make, I don't know, like a condo to show off the Aurora Borealis? Do we now abuse this bill and call that a project of national security because it will feed our economy and our income? See, these are the things that we have to be very, very careful about moving forward on this bill. And I don't and Mark Carney, I sincerely still believe in Mark Carney and his ability to protect this country. I believe sincerely that he is doing everything in his power to fast track everything because we are in a crazy time in this world. Am I
But the thing,
time?
but the, you're
I, I saw Maple myself. I don't know if I was over time or not.
No, you're good. You're good. I am just watching on two different screens, so I'm actually modding the chat while I'm listening to see. So you're good, Calvin. You're absolutely good.
Okay.
No, I believe Mark Carney was a good choice. We know that he's looking out for Canada's best interests. National security alone, Bill 5 is just a bill to drill. Like it's literally
It,
all about drilling. It's all about the extraction of minerals that we have. It's all about the Canadian conservatives selling off our minerals, resources, all that stuff to the highest bidder. That's all it is. And
the conservative party, I'm very wary of that, and you're totally 100% right. We have Daniel Smith, having Gina Reinhardt from Australia, the Donald Trump version, coming in as an oligarch in Alberta. And we have Tim Houston here in Nova Scotia inviting American corporations to come drill for uranium. Whatever materials and minerals that are extracted from our land should be extracted by Canadian companies in consultation and in cooperation with First Nations. So
absolutely, First
moving
Nations and sorry.
so moving forward, so extraction of these rare earth materials is a question of national security. There is one mineral, and this is part of what's going on overseas in Iran too. Iran um, has found, after 10 years of searching, a rare earth mineral. It starts with a S. I forget what it's called exactly. Psyllium,
Beryllium?
Cerillium. Yes, and that's used as in rocket boosters to dissipate heat in computers in high technology. So right now, China has an 80% control on rare earth materials. And then Iran is going to be the next player, the global player on rare earth materials. And everybody in the world needs rare earth materials to survive. Everything our technology is made out of is based on these metals. So that's part to do with the conflict here. But here in Canada, we have to expose them, we have to refine them, but we have to maintain control of them. So, what I'm worried about is a conservative government coming in and using this piece of legislation and giving a free pass to American corporations for them to move in and for them to basically rape and pillage the land for their own benefit. And these companies, you have to realize, these companies are running on a limited liability certificate, which means if something goes wrong, if there's some kind of environmental disaster, they'll just pack up their stuff and go and leave the Canadians and the First Nations with all the environmental disasters to clean up.
Right.
This is something that should have been addressed in that bill, but it did not. And Doug Ford also proposed this bill and pushed it through his majority conservative government on the premise of eliminating the green belt. Endangered species live on that area. His project was all about corporate private development of apartment buildings. That has nothing to do with national security. If you want to make apartments, why don't you make a complex that is designed that would work with the Canadian people, or make homes and houses? An apartment complex for a rich corporation that's based out of the United States is not a project for national security.
No, and Calvin, you're right. But Absorb brought a good point. Bill 5 is going to take out the Ring of Fire, which is the minerals that we have in that. It's going to take the minerals out of there, and then it's going to be the exploitation of that, right? So the land, all the minerals in this country, do not actually belong to the crown. They belong to Métis, Inuit, and First Nations.
Yeah.
Um, or First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whatever, however you want to say it. Um, so that's a big problem we have with people just coming in and overstepping. I don't believe Canadian corporations should be held off. I don't believe it should be held off, but they need to have us at the table full heartedly. I can't stress this enough. It is going to be so bad because Bill 5 is going to deplete all minerals, all everything. The water the ecosystem's going to go. The land is going to go. I can't.
Yeah, but Bill 5, both in Ontario and in Parliament, though, if First Nations don't agree with a specific project, the federal government can basically say, sorry, you're up shit creek without a paddle. There's the door. And they can go ahead with the project themselves. So there should have been, and having First Nation people in Parliament, there should have been some stipulation in there that First Nations had to be existent and present throughout the entire process, and made it a requirement in order for projects to go through that a certain, I don't know, a certain percentage of First Nations had to agree with it. Like, make it a democratic process. There's 1.8 million First Nation people on this in Canada. Well, have a referendum. If the majority of the 1.8 million agree with this project, then there you have it. Or the projects that are affected in certain regional areas will have the people that are affected around that certain area decide and vote on a
Okay,
community
okay.
referendum.
So we have a comment in the comment sections of Maple Minds podcast. Bill C5 is not the same as Bill 5.
It's similar, isn't it? Bill C5 and Bill C5 is Alberta and no, Ontario, and then Bill 5 is federal. They're not the same. We know that, but it is along the same lines to fast track and push projects of national security. The underlying reasoning and the logic behind those bills is to fast track issues. And if First Nations don't agree with it, then we're out of luck. But we have some First Nation people in Parliament, so maybe, hopefully, things will change. That they'll continue being on in consultation with First Nations.
Just give me a second. I'm just trying to look up something real quick.
Yeah. Raytheon. Hold on. We just got Jeep.
Okay, so I looked it up, and Absorb is actually right. Bill C5 is here. Let me read what I found here.
Yeah.
Bill C-5 is an act to enact the Free Trade and Labor Mobility in Canada Act and Building Canada Act, reprinted as amended by the Standing Committee of Transport, Infrastructure and Committees, working as a copy for the use of House of Commons as a report stage and reported in the House of Commons. Okay, so the Canadian Economic Act. Oh God, I can't say that word today. So it gives federal government sweeping powers to improve infrastructure projects. Facing tough criticism, Mackenzie Gray explains critics call for a second forensic psychiatric hospital in BC. That is what that is. But the Bill C5, or Bill 5 is what Absorb One is talking about. It's going to hurt a lot of people. Let's look at both those. They're both going to hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, at the heart of it,
but
they're basically the same thing.
But no, they're not. They're completely different. One is talking about the economics. One is about taking the extraction of minerals from like 40, however many reserves that uh, was just mentioned in the comments. I'm not on the comment section right now, but this Bill 5 is going to hurt a lot of people. It's going to ruin water. It's gonna totally destroy the water system. It's gonna hurt the reserves. The living. I literally just read this bill, and it is so detrimental that it be struck down. But it was passed, right? So basically, they can do whatever they want, extract as much as they want, and it's gonna hurt them. It's not gonna hurt the people doing it. It's gonna hurt the people around it, the reserves around it, First Nation people around the area. That's what's gonna hurt it, right?
Yeah.
That's the part that we're trying to kind of get separated.
Right. Basically the Bill C5 in Ontario is the foundation for the Bill 5 that's in Parliament. So bill so the bill in Ontario is basically the basic version of what Parliament just passed. Again, at the heart of it, it's still going to be that if First Nations don't agree with a certain project, they can be overruled. That basically First Nations do not have a veto power on projects of national security. And Mark Carney's minister said this. And then Doug Ford also believes in this too. So at the heart of the
Okay,
legislation is still the same.
okay. Bill 5 is Ontario provincial.
Yeah.
Bill C5 is federal.
Yes.
So Bill 5 only hits Ontario. Bill
Yes.
C5 is a federal jurisdiction. That's
Yes.
what they're having the problem with.
Yes. Okay. So if they're having a okay, so what
Okay.
okay, let me try to explain this to you. So Bill Bill 5 of Ontario, okay, basically lays out the framework or the groundwork of projects. And they if First Nations want to stop these projects, Bill 5 comes into effect and tells First Nations, sorry, can't help you. Get out of the way. That is the framework for the bill that was introduced in Parliament. A little bit more fancier, a little bit more tidied up. But again, the basic premise is if there's projects of national security within Canada that are federal, and if First Nations do not agree with them, basically what exactly Mark Carney's minister said, First Nations do not have a veto power on this, and they can push them aside and keep going with the project. That is the problem that I have. I also that I understand that they have to do that with projects of national security, because if we don't get those projects done that have to do with national security, then we don't have a country, we don't have First Nations, we don't have treaties. So I'm on the fence of that. I support it for that reason, but the reason I don't support it is what's to prevent a conservative government from coming in and taking advantage of that legislation the way it's worded. There should have been something in there that clearly defines what a project of national security could be and would be, and what would be accepted as a project of national security versus a conservative whim. Oh, that's a project of national security. I think, oh, my buddy will make billions off of that. That's a project of national security. I'm going to call that a project of national security. So that's the issue that I have with it.
The issue I have with it is Bill C5 is a federal economic thing, where Bill 5 is an Ontario provincial thing, and that's what we're misconstruing.
Yes. They might change the wording around. They might call it economic. This might call it uh, closing down trade barriers. Essentially, basically, though, it does the same thing. It will eliminate First Nations if it has to. If it has to, let's just hope it doesn't have to. Those are the things that I just am very cautious about, because First Nations historically don't trust the government, because the government says one thing and does something completely different. Mark Carney said First Nations are going to be involved as partners. We're going to have meaningful consultation. And then he passes legislation that contradicts that. Plus, his Minister of Justice, I think, says it doesn't, First Nations does not have veto power over national security projects. So you're saying one thing, and then you're doing another thing, and then you have somebody else saying something that contradicts what you're saying. So these are things they have to get their message in straight. They have to do something, because right now, this is the biggest. Um, this was the biggest reason why the Conservatives gained so much power, because the federal government, the Liberal federal government, does not communicate with the Canadian population. Regular people like me, like you, just regular people that work day to day, that mind their business and go on about their lives and hope that the federal government is there to protect their interests. But they don't tell us what the hell is going on. So, and they don't consult us with what's going on. They do what they want to do, regardless of whether we're in agreement or not. And this is what the biggest problem is. And if Mark Carney does not fix that problem on communicating with the general public, he's going to lose the next election.
Okay, yeah. What is the next topic we have on schedule there, Polly?
The apology.
Yeah,
You ready for that one?
I'm as ready as I'm gonna be.
All right, let's play the clip of Doug Ford before the apology, his atrocious, bigoted, racist statements on First Nation people. You see, before we play this clip, this man in this clip, this is how he feels about First Nations. This is what he believes in his heart about First Nations. So let's play the clip.
Like handing an opportunity on a silver platter to First Nations that by the way, I have treated like gold. And over again, the chiefs, national chiefs, the regional chiefs, other chiefs have told me we've never had more access to a premier ever, as long as they can remember. So, like I tell Rickford all the time, I should be the Minister of Indigenous Affairs because I get calls every single day. And when I first came into office, I told Minister Rickford, treat them all, give them what they need, whatever they want for them to prosper. But there's going to be a point that you can't just keep coming hat in hand all the time to the government. You got to be able to take care of yourselves. And when you literally have gold mines, nickel mines, every type of critical mineral that the world wants, and you're saying, no, I don't want to touch that. By the way, give me money. Not going to happen. It's simple. It will help them develop the mines and become very prosperous in their communities.
Okay,
Something they've never had
that's enough. That's
ever
enough.
in their entire lives. And I'm bending over backwards to make sure.
Okay. See, this man, this is how he truly feels about First Nations. I treat them like gold. So having access to a public servant is treating us like gold. That's the same right afforded to every single Canadian, whether if you're a First Nation or not. So he's taking himself as so important, as so almighty, that just simple access to him, to his presence, is treating you like gold. Come on. What is that bullshit about? He's got an inflated sense of ego and importance. Another thing, treat us like gold. Treating us like gold is passing your Bill 5, C5, where you roll over First Nation and First Nation rights and environmentalists. Is that treating us like gold? I don't think so. And so he says, oh, they come with hat in hand, like we're some kind of beggars. Excuse me, that is one racist, bigoted generalization. I work my ass off every day. I get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and I work until sometimes at 7 o'clock at night, sometimes until 9 o'clock at night. And I know a lot of First Nations that are people that are the exact same way. This misconception about First Nations always bumming for money and doing nothing, that is such a lie that needs to be corrected. And to have a sitting premier politician propagate that lie is absolutely atrocious. It is unforgivable. It is disgraceful. And there should be some kind of punishment that comes from his cabinet or whatever, from his parliament or in his house to punish him for those remarks. But there won't be, you know. And then we asks, he says, like, we beg for money. Like, he's degrading and devaluing all First Nations that way. And it absolutely mind blowing to me how any First Nation can stand next to him after that. You want to play the next clip?
And I just want to say I sincerely apologize for my words, not only if it hurt all the chiefs in that room, but all First Nations, because we know that if we work together, and I said during the campaign, nothing moves without First Nations consultation, respecting duty to consult, and make sure that we work together. And I get passionate because I want prosperity for their communities. I want prosperity for their children and their grandchildren. And I also mentioned when I was in.
Can you fast forward to the part where the national Grand Chief speaks?
I'll clarify that. So I just want to add to that. Those meetings, in our view, were of that. And it are our chiefs today. While going to this meeting, we were, our chiefs, our rights holders, were fulfilling their duty as a treaty partner to have those respectful dialogue and communications with the Crown. To be honest, we weren't expecting apology because of how we feel we've been treated. And so we acknowledged, all of our chiefs have acknowledged and accepted in that room today the Premier's apology. We were in that room, right? So in terms of misinformation, I will speak to that because journalists listen to everybody always speaking here and misinterpret some of those comments that become
Can you
polarizing
pause that?
and become very.
So, before I start my spiel on that, he's talking about in the previous video, there's all kinds of minerals, there's all kinds of wealth in the land. See, First Nations don't think of linear money grabbing and making wealth in that immediate moment. They look at, because that's a capitalistic thought process, to make as much as you can while you can. Whereas First Nation thought is about consistency, about longevity, about future generations. This is why First Nations don't really care or give a shit about mining gold. If there's mines in their reservations, then, or natural rare earth minerals, they really don't care. They would rather prefer the land survive for future generations. But that video right there, it, to me, and this is my personal opinion, it is unforgivable what he stated in the first video, because that's his true beliefs on First Nation people. And to have him apologize now Yeah, he's sorry and his apology is sincere because he is busted. If he wasn't busted, if he wasn't caught, his same belief would still be the same belief he has back then. He probably has the same belief he has now, that First Nations don't matter, and all First Nations do is ask, hat in hand, asking for money. That is such bullshit. And to
There
have,
is.
post, hold on, and to have our AFN Grand Chief stand next to that bigot and accept his apology, to me, is a betrayal to every First Nation individual living in this country, and she should resign along with Doug Ford. They marched him up there and accepted his apology on behalf of all First Nation people. But I can tell you one thing, this First Nation individual does not buy the bullshit apology that Ford passed out. And just, I am absolutely sickened to have the National Grand Chief stand next to that man without demanding some kind of repercussions happening to that man, because this is what he believes. And it was caught on the national stage. And there's no disinformation and misinformation about it. He said what he said. We all heard it. We all saw it. Okay, to you, Smarshy.
Okay, so we all know that Doug Ford is, well, Doug Ford, and he'll say just about anything, right? The way I look at this whole fucking show of shenanigans um, is one I'm not surprised nor am I shocked. Because non-Indigenous people do what non-Indigenous people do day in and day out. They say they care, they say they're here for us, politician or not. It's every non-Indigenous person that, oh, we promise we'll do this and we'll help you do this, and when push comes to shove, they're in it for themselves. And Doug Ford saying the things he said, yeah, egregious as they are, I'm not surprised, nor am I shocked anymore.
No, me
And
neither.
I did a little more digging into the whole thing, and I did a little more digging into Bill 5. I'm sorry to just kind of go back to that. It's more than just an economic. And again, Indigenous people, First Nations, Métis, Inuit, whoever is Indigenous, it was never a monetary value for us to have those resources in there. We don't care to. We don't want to just not share the land. We want to protect the land. And with Bill C5, Bill 5, that takes away from the Endangered Species Act. It gets rid of that. So the animals are no longer going to be protected. The pollution, the mercury poisoning in the water, you know, all this stuff goes in with Bill 5. And for him to say that after getting his bill passed is astronomically asinine. And it's just me personally, I am not surprised that these politicians even say this anymore. I'm not. I'm nor am I shocked. Do I agree with it? Absolutely 1,000% not. Can I stop it? No, because I'm not their handler nor am I their mother. They should know better. But they do what they do because they want to fill their pockets, and it's all about greed, is all it is. That's
You're
my thought on
absolutely
the
right.
apology.
You're
And the
absolutely
apology. And the apology. He got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and now he has to apologize because of what he said and blah 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 blah. And it means zilch to me as one Indigenous person. I don't think he's really sorry at all. I think
no.
he's just saying sorry because he got his hand caught in the cookie jar.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. He said that after the bill passed. He doesn't really give a shit anymore. He only apologized right now because he got caught, and it's for PR. But Bill 5 is passed in Ontario, and whatever First Nations try to do makes no difference to him. So to have the Grand Chief standing up next to him is just, to me, is disgusting. and she should be ashamed, and those chiefs that met with him should be ashamed. I have no love loss about people standing next to bigots and accepting their apology. Um, what he said is unforgivable, and I certainly won't forget that. Um, how would he make amends? How about getting rid of Bill 5 and actually do meaningful consultation
But
with
he
First
won't,
Nation?
Calvin. That's the
Then he's
problem.
then he's
He
not
is
so
a
worried.
politician. He's a non-Indigenous person. He does not care. He never will. He never has. And telling people you treat them like gold, but yet telling them on slapping them in the face with the same hand that you feed them with,
No.
it's called don't. My grandma, my cookum always said to me, and my grandma, my mom's mom always said to me, don't bite the hand that feeds you, because we are the ones feeding them, and they're biting them very, very much, and
We
it's not
see
going to be good.
I see a lot of organizations, they do this, right? They put up token Indians. That's what people call them, token Indians, to make it look good for the press and pictures.
Yep.
And that's all the First Nation people that was standing next to Doug Ford during that apology. That's all they were. Just props for him. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
No, they weren't just props, though, Calvin. Let's get it. Let's be honest. Let's keep it 100. They were there because it's performative action.
No. Yeah. So, do you guys want to get into the pipeline in Alberta and Miss Danielle Smith Mar-a-Lago?
I could go without talking about her, but yeah, let's dive right in.
All right. So, Danielle Smith is creating a ruckus. She's implanting a narrative that the federal government does not want to approve this pipeline from Alberta to the BC coast to pump 1
Wait
million.
a minute, though. It's Evie doing that, talking about putting a second pipeline in. It's not Danielle Smith this time.
It's both of them. Um, Danielle Smith is the one proposing it, and she's trying to get private investors. And EB is on board with it and basically telling Danielle Smith, you get this done, you get the funding, we'll go ahead with it. But this is the confusing part, okay? This new pipeline will pump, or this pipeline that they're proposing will pump 1 million barrels of oil. But the thing is, there's already an existing pipeline from Alberta to the BC coast. And mind you, it only pumps 300 to 400 barrels of oil per day. So, yes, an expansion of another pipeline that pumps 1 million barrels would be great. But there's already an expansion of that pipeline taking place that will end up, and it started in June 2024 of last year. So this expansion will almost equal up to 1 million barrels of oil being transported from Alberta to the BC coast. So what is she complaining about? What is she crying about? What she wants is already being done. And the federal government isn't stopping it. The federal government isn't putting um, barriers for it to be done. It's actually already being done. So why is she bitching about this? Why is she trying to manipulate Albertans into fooling them into thinking that there is no pipeline, that they need a pipeline when there's already a pipeline in place and a second one being built that will equal up to close to 1 million barrels of oil a day? Um, it boggles my mind. And then when I think about it, uh, she's trying to create division with Albertans, with the rest of Canada, especially the federal government, and for separation. See, she's complaining about all this stuff, and it's already being done. Um, she wants private investors, but private investors, she's saying, won't invest because there's no fast track process with the Canadian government. But Bill C5 just passed in Parliament that would make that a priority. So everything she's saying is a lie. Why? It's to divide Albertans that are uninformed into thinking that the federal government is against them, and which will
Right.
further her initiative of separation.
And this is the thing. It says David. Well, I'm looking up the CBC thing. He's defending the new LNG pipeline with the terminus near Prince Rupert, which means it goes through the Nisga's Nation and Texas-based Western LNG, opposed by Hereditary Chief, which is allowed to be done. But he's not actually not defending it. Not only defending it, he's not disagreeing with it. The reason it's being blocked is because there's no money. There's
Yeah.
no funding.
There's
Because
no
all the
money, there's no
funding,
funding. And
there's no funding.
she's trying to create a ruckus, because there's another thing too. She's creating such a ruckus. She's trying to strong arm. This is personally what I believe. She's trying to strong arm the federal government to fund this additional pipeline. So, in altogether, after this expansion pipeline is finished, that was started in June 2024. So that'll be 2 pipelines now, pumping close to 1 million barrels of oil. And then she
Yeah,
wants a third pipeline that also pumps out 1 million barrels of oil. So she wants Alberta to pump out 2 million barrels of oil a day. Like,
yeah.
this is just
And she,
unreasonable, unattainable. If the federal government invests in a project like that and uses taxpayer
which they
money,
have,
yeah, and use taxpayer funded money to pay for this pipeline, once all the oil dries up in Alberta, which is always set to be in the next 50 years, that money taxpayers would have spent to buy that third pipeline will never recoup its investment. And these corporations, these limited liability corporations, will just pack up and move on to the next victim. And Canadian taxpayers will be the suckers paying for the bill.
Here's what
So,
I wonder.
what's that?
I wonder now that Iran is closing that strait, how this is going to affect people's decisions.
gas is
Uh,
going to go skyrocket. Their positions are going to be all over the place. They're going to blame one person or another. It's going to be a gong show.
regardless if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, it's going to have little or no impact on this particular topic, because this topic would take years to complete. And the Strait of Hormuz would be an immediate threat, immediate impact on the global community. Because if you think of the Strait of Hormuz, if you think of a world as a heart, okay, it's
Mhm.
pumping, bada bing, bada bang. If you cut supply at the Strait of Hormuz, you're cutting a vital artery to your heart. And this entire world can have a heart attack. We will wake up to oil prices being close to $200 a barrel, which would mean your fuel at the gas station will explode to unattainable levels. Your basic necessities, such as groceries, your toilet paper, or whatever, will come to a halt and be so expensive that majority of poor Canadians won't be able to afford it. Um, and the basic supply chain will be disrupted because fuel will be of short supply. And in reality, it's a disaster waiting to happen. If this happens, if they block the Strait of Hormuz, it's going to drag every single country that is nuclear capable into that conflict.
So can I just go back to David Eby for a minute? He is talking in conversations with Daniel Smith about building a new oil pipeline, but he doesn't want to do it unless a private company steps forward with funding and proposals. And he asserts that the main barrier to this is not him, but that there's no money, no project right now. He wants he wants a company to be committed and to have a real project.
But I don't think they understand the implications of that. I really
Mhm.
don't. Because private company or not, you still need to go by regulations and not an LLC or anything like that. You need to have the fiduciary obligation to consult. You have to make sure that you are able to clean up the wells if they, for whatever reason, they bust. And I'm sorry, I'm not okay with this at all. I'm not.
I
I
do
am
have
not
something.
okay.
I do
Just
have something that we
just
could watch, but it's 9 minutes long.
yeah, no, well, it's not. Um,
Okay.
see, Mr. Eby knows that using taxpayer money would be a waste of money. He understands the game. It's just these corporations wanting to move in. Daniel Smith wants the Canadian government to foot the bill, so all these corporations can make bank, claim bankruptcy, and then move on. Another thing, she's trying to strong arm the government to pay for that, but she's also using it as a wedge between the federal government and the rest of Canada and Alberta. So it serves her two purposes. So EB saying, okay, good, let's get the project done, get some private investors. No private investor is going to invest in that project, even if they were given the scissors to cut the red tape and say, okay, you do it, no environmental assessments, nothing, just build the pipeline, have at it. No corporation, no reasonable corporation would invest in it because the Alberta sands have a limited time of resources and a finite amount of resources. So the amount of money that would be spent on that project would never recoup its money. And so this is why Daniel Smith is trying to strong arm the federal government to pay for it. She doesn't give a shit about the federal government losing money, but she does give a shit about her friends in the LNG industry about making money and losing money.
So, what was the next?
Um, oh yeah, current events. The current events. So everybody knows that the world is really on top of its head right now. Everyone's nail biting, panicking. What the hell is going to go on? I've watched and analyzed the situation for the last, I don't know, 8 months, and I saw this coming 8 months ago. Donald Trump does not have the mental capability and the temperament and the proper ego. His ego's too big, not proper ego. His ego's too big to successfully navigate global politics. Global politics, you have to understand, is a balancing act on a fine, thin wire at all times. And when you piss one person off, you piss two people off. And you piss two people off, you piss eight people off. And this is what Donald Trump cannot comprehend, that Iran, no matter how awful they are, that they're a sponsor of all terrorists around the world and have sleeper cells, and they support the Houthis and all other militant groups in the Middle East and terrorists. They have friends who are very powerful. So, Russia warned the United States, China warned the United States, Pakistan warned the United States, groups in Iraq warned the United States, the Houthis in Yemen warned the United States, Turkey warned the United States not to do shit, but yet this man was successfully manipulated by Netanyahu, which is another man with a huge ego and no empathy. We're basically dancing. The world is being hijacked basically by narcissistic, huge ego, no empathy lunatics. We have the supreme leader of the Middle East in Iran. He's batshit crazy. He's got nothing to lose. He will cut off the Strait of Hormuz because he knows his country is going down. He's going to take everybody with us. And this is why, for the last 8 months, I've been begging and pleading with all leaders, both in my First Nation and in all local communities, that we have to start living and preparing and educating the youth and young adults basically how to live off the land again. We have forgotten traditional medicines. We have forgotten basic foraging skills. We have forgotten how to survive the harsh winters. If this goes south, and I hope it does not, because millions and millions of people will perish, and that's not a good thing. Global security and stability is of utmost importance, and every country in the world right now that has a sane, stable leader is trying to cool everybody down. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Russia just announced that Iran has a lot of friends that will provide them with nuclear weapons. And you want to give a nuclear weapon to a batshit crazy leader like the leader Iran has? We are no longer living in a safe world. This world right now is at DEFCON 5. And First Nations have survived generations and generations of genocide, of plague, of disease, of genocide, extinction, everything. We're still here. Why? Because of the way we used to live. We survived basically providing what we needed from the land. This is why First Nations have a strong connection with the land. And in order for us to survive another 200 years, our leaders have to set up programs to utilize our elders, to utilize anyone that still knows how to trap and hunt and gather and preserve food, and teach that to the next generation. That has to be the utmost priority right now, even before language of your native tongue. If our people, if First Nations are going to survive, this is what needs to happen. And if nothing happens and everybody calms down and the world starts to sing kumbaya again, well, guess what? That education you provided in your communities just revitalized and strengthened the First Nation identity of your people. So the identity and the knowledge will keep going for another 200 years if the world doesn't go to shit. So it's a win-win situation.
Hmm. I also agree that we need to teach our young people, both non-Indigenous and Indigenous, and our elders as well, non-Indigenous and Indigenous. We all need to learn to bring a sense of community, and with that sense of community, whether it be the Indigenous people meeting the non-Indigenous or both, vice versa. We need to come together collectively and start gardening because the prices are going to get more expensive with the genocides in Iran that are going to start happening, and the genocide that's happening in Palestine. But honestly, I think that's what we need to focus on. Check your local stores. Check what vegetables you can grow. Check your soil in your yard if your soil is even fertile for vegetables. Get a do something. You know, make a plan. Plant some vegetables. Community garden.
Yeah.
Go to your MLA. Go to your mayor. Go your constituents, the other constituents in the city, and just try to like come up with a community garden. Because if we don't start right now, what's gonna say it's gonna happen when stuff gets harder and harder to like produce and With all these minerals dissipating from our earth, we're not going to have much topsoil left. I don't think in Alberta we have much topsoil at all. So that's the problem. Our topsoil is gone. Like it's diminishing.
No. Food security is probably one of the biggest things moving forward. This is why the 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 owner of Microsoft, Bill
Yeah.
Gates, he's invested in acres and acres of farmland in the United States. Um, in the United States, small time private landowners, farmers, were bankrupted on purpose by the Trump government, and guess who moved in
Mhm.
to buy up all the land? J.D. Vance and his corporation.
All right.
So food security is
I
going to be huge in the future.
I'm gonna drop down. My connection is really bad here, and it's starting to look like it's gonna storm. So I'm gonna bow out gracefully. You guys have a good night. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you, Smushy.
Bye.
I think we're pretty much okay for time now, I guess.
Okay. Do you want to close off and then um,
Yeah.
do you want to talk in TikTok?
Well, I've got tons of stuff to do, but maybe
Okay.
5 minutes or so. If anybody has any questions, I mean, there's only a few people in there. If I have a question, I can answer it. If not, then yeah, we'll
Okay.
sign out.
Okay. Thank you everybody for joining us. Please remember to follow Maple Minds TikTok, Maple Minds YouTube. If you could subscribe, we're trying to get monetized. So we need 1,000 subscribers. We're up to 316, I think. So that's pretty good. Yeah, so have a great day. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. We're going to switch over to TikTok just for about 5 minutes if anybody has any questions or anything to say about what was covered today.
You guys stay
So
deadly.
bye, YouTube.
Bye.